You should be grateful I let someone your size wear a uniform in this house." The words came through Alessandro Moretti's phone so clearly that his hand stopped above the contract, waiting for his signature. 3,000 miles away, in the marble kitchen of his Chicago estate, his fiancée, Vanessa Cole, believed she had ended their call. She had not. Alessandro remained silent in his private office overlooking Manhattan, his dark gaze fixed on the glowing screen while Vanessa's voice sharpened. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you, Nora," a softer voice answered, steady despite the humiliation. "I'm looking at you, ma'am." Nora Bennett had worked as a maid in the Moretti estate for 11 months. At 32, she was a full-figured woman with warm brown eyes, capable hands, and a habit of making herself smaller whenever wealthy guests entered the room. Years of cruel jokes from classmates, strangers, and one former boyfriend had taught her that people often judged her shape before they noticed her kindness. Still, she cared for Alessandro's elderly aunt, remembered every staff member's birthday, and quietly sent part of each paycheck to her mother in Milwaukee. Vanessa knew none of that mattered to people like her. She stepped closer, her diamond heels clicking against the floor. "The engagement dinner is Saturday. Designers, politicians, and half the city will be here. I won't have you embarrassing me." Nora lowered the silver tray she had been polishing. "I was assigned to serve the east dining room." "Not anymore. You'll stay downstairs where no one can see you." Alessandro's jaw tightened. Men who controlled docks, unions, and underground deals lowered their voices when he entered a room. At 38, the Moretti Mafia Boss was known for his wealth, his discipline, and the cold precision with which he handled betrayal. He trusted contracts more than promises and silence more than affection. His father's murder and his brother's treachery had buried whatever softness he once possessed. Vanessa was supposed to be a strategic choice, elegant enough for society and connected enough to strengthen his alliances. Until that moment, he had considered the marriage practical. Then he heard the scrape of broken glass. "I'm sorry," Nora said quickly. "My hand slipped." "Of course it did." Vanessa laughed. "Clumsy and oversized. What a combination." Alessandro rose from his chair. Across from him, 3 attorneys stopped speaking. He lifted one finger and the room fell silent. Back in Chicago, Nora knelt to gather the shattered pieces. A thin line of blood appeared across her palm. Vanessa did not offer a towel. Instead, she leaned against the counter and lowered her voice. "You know why Alessandro keeps you employed, don't you?" Nora paused. "Because I do my job." "No, because he doesn't notice you." Alessandro's expression changed. Not anger yet. Something quieter and more dangerous. Nora wrapped her injured hand in the corner of her apron. "Mr. Moretti has always treated the staff fairly. You've met him twice. That was enough to know he doesn't enjoy cruelty." The attorneys watched Alessandro remove his watch and place it on the desk, a gesture his closest men recognized as a warning. Vanessa continued, unaware that every word was being heard. "Careful, Nora. Admiration can become delusion. A man like Alessandro would never look twice at a woman like you." There was a long silence. When Nora answered, her voice did not shake. "I never asked him to." "Good. Then you won't mind leaving before the engagement dinner." "Leaving the dining room? Leaving the estate? I already packed your things." Alessandro's eyes hardened. Nora slowly stood. "You can't fire me. Mr. Moretti hired me personally after his aunt fell. By Saturday I'll be Mrs. Moretti. This house will belong to me." Nora looked toward the security camera above the pantry door. "Then perhaps you should know his aunt heard everything you said." Vanessa turned. In the doorway stood 80-year-old Rosa Moretti, leaning on her cane, her face pale with disappointment. Nora immediately crossed the room and steadied her, placing herself between the older woman and the broken glass despite her bleeding hand. Alessandro saw none of it, but he heard Rosa whisper, "Nora, you're hurt." "It's nothing," Nora replied. "Please don't step forward." Even after being insulted, threatened, and dismissed, she was protecting someone else. That was when Alessandro finally spoke into the phone. His voice was calm enough to freeze every person in both rooms. "Vanessa." In Chicago, the kitchen went dead silent. Vanessa stared at the phone on the island, the active call timer glowing beneath Alessandro's name. "Alessandro, I thought we disconnected." "You thought wrong." He buttoned his black suit jacket and walked toward the office door. No one leaves my house, no one speaks to Nora Bennett, and no one touches her belongings until I arrive. Vanessa's confidence cracked. You're flying back over a maid? Alessandro stopped, his voice dropping into the tone that had ended wars before they began. I'm flying back because my fiancée just revealed who she is. Then he heard Nora gasp as Rosa's cane struck the floor, followed by a second sound that made his blood run cold. The unmistakable click of the estate's security system, locking every door from the inside. The lock was not part of my security system, Alessandro said, and every man in his Manhattan office understood the danger hidden beneath his calm voice. He pressed the phone closer as alarms began pulsing through the Chicago estate. Nora, take my aunt away from the windows. Vanessa's breathing turned uneven. Alessandro, this is probably a malfunction. My system does not malfunction. He looked at Matteo Russo, his head of security. Get the jet ready. Call the Chicago team through the emergency frequency. Matteo was already moving. 3,000 miles away, red lights flashed along the marble ceiling while steel shutters lowered over the windows. Nora wrapped one arm around Rosa Moretti's waist and guided her toward the pantry corridor. Her cut palm left a small crimson mark on the older woman's sleeve, but she ignored it. The safe room is behind the wine cellar, Vanessa said, rushing toward the hallway. Nora blocked her path. Mrs. Moretti cannot manage those stairs. Move! No! Vanessa stared at the maid she had spent months dismissing. Nora's shoulders were trembling, yet her feet remained planted. The downstairs safe room is too far, Nora said. There's another one beside the library. Rosa looked at her sharply. How do you know that? I found the concealed panel while cleaning after the winter storm. I never opened it. Alessandro heard every word. Most employees would have pretended not to notice a hidden room. Nora had remembered it and kept the secret. Take Rosa there, he ordered. The access code is 0719. Vanessa reached for the phone. Give me that! I know this house better than she does. Alessandro's voice cut through the argument. Then why did Nora find the nearest safe room before you? Vanessa froze. Nora did not smile or look triumphant. She simply helped Rosa forward. That restraint caught Alessandro's attention more deeply than any insult had. Nora, he said. She hesitated. Yes, Mr. Moretti. Use my name. The request surprised everyone, including him. Alessandro, she said softly. Something in his chest tightened. Tell me what you see. Nora looked down the dark hallway. The main lights are off. Emergency lights are working. The west security door closed, but the east door is still open. Anything else? She listened. Beneath the alarm came a faint mechanical hum. The service elevator is moving. Alessandro turned to Matteo. No one should have access to that elevator during lockdown. Matteo checked his tablet. The system says it's coming up from the garage. Vanessa's face lost its colour. Perhaps one of the guards. All guards were ordered outside for your private event inspection, Nora said. Vanessa snapped toward her. How would you know? Because you told them to leave while you dismissed me. Alessandro's gaze hardened. The timing was too precise. Someone had cleared the house, activated an internal lockdown, and entered through the garage. Nora, get Rosa inside the safe room now. They reached the library where Nora pressed the hidden panel. A section of dark wood slid aside, revealing a narrow steel door. Rosa entered, but Nora remained in the doorway. Come inside, Alessandro ordered. Vanessa is still in the hall. She can take care of herself. She's unarmed. Alessandro went silent. Nora had every reason to abandon Vanessa, yet she could not leave another person exposed. That was not weakness. It was courage without applause. You have 30 seconds, he said. Then both of you enter. Nora ran back. Vanessa stood near the staircase, frozen as the service elevator chimed. Move, Nora whispered, grabbing her wrist. The elevator doors opened, revealing a man in a grey maintenance uniform. He carried a toolbox, but his shoes were polished black leather, not work boots. Nora saw the detail instantly. The stranger smiled. Electrical inspection. At 9:30 at night, Nora asked. His eyes dropped to her injured hand, then to Vanessa's diamond bracelet. Where is Mr. Moretti? Nora stepped in front of Vanessa. Not here. The man reached inside his jacket. Before he could pull anything out, Nora seized the silver serving tray from the console table and threw it against the emergency alarm switch. A deafening siren exploded through the hallway, startling him long enough for her to shove Vanessa toward the library. They ran. A sharp crack struck the wall behind them, scattering plaster, but Nora did not stop until Vanessa and Rosa were inside. She slammed the steel door and entered the code. Alessandro heard her breath coming fast through the phone. "Are you hurt?" "No. Do not lie to me." Nora looked at the bruise forming where Vanessa had grabbed her earlier. "I'm fine. That is not what I asked." His voice softened in a way no one in his office had heard before. "Are you hurt?" Nora swallowed. "My hand is bleeding, but Rosa is safe." Alessandro closed his eyes for 1 second. She had said nothing about herself until pressed. "There's a medical kit under the bench. Use it." "What about the man outside?" "He made a mistake entering my home." His tone turned cold again. "He made a worse mistake frightening you." Vanessa stared at the phone, stunned by the possessive edge in his voice. Nora knelt beside Rosa and opened the medical kit. As she reached for the bandages, something metallic fell from the pocket of Vanessa's coat and landed on the floor. It was a security access card bearing the same company logo as the intruder's uniform. Rosa saw it first. Nora saw Vanessa's face next, and through the phone, Alessandro heard his aunt ask the question that changed the night completely. "Vanessa, why does that man have your security card?" Vanessa's face went white. "That card isn't mine," she said, but her voice cracked before the lie was finished. Alessandro stood beside the conference table in Manhattan, listening to the silence inside the safe room. "Turn the camera toward her," he told Nora. Nora lifted the phone with her uninjured hand. Vanessa stood beneath the cold emergency light, her expensive coat hanging open, while the security card gleamed on the floor between them. Rosa Moretti sat rigidly on the bench, one hand pressed to her chest. "Pick it up," Alessandro ordered. Vanessa did not move. "I said pick it up." She bent slowly and held the card toward the screen. Matteo entered Alessandro's office with a tablet. "The identification number belongs to Damon Vale Security." Alessandro recognized the name immediately. Damon Vale was not a technician. He was the younger brother of Victor Vale, a rival who had spent years trying to gain control of Moretti shipping routes along Lake Michigan. "Vanessa," Alessandro said, "why are you carrying access issued by my enemy?" Tears appeared in her eyes with suspicious speed. "I hired Damon for Saturday's engagement dinner. Your guards intimidate my guests, so I wanted private security. You replaced my men without permission? I wanted one evening that didn't feel like a military operation." Nora looked at the card more closely. A dark red stripe crossed its corner. She had seen the same mark earlier that week on a delivery manifest left near the pantry. "Alessandro," she said, "this card is not for event staff." His eyes shifted to her image on the screen. "How do you know?" "The catering badges Vanessa ordered were blue. I signed for them Tuesday. This one matches the card used by the man who inspected the wine cellar yesterday." Vanessa turned sharply. "You're mistaken. He wasn't carrying wine equipment," Nora continued. "He had a small black case, and he kept asking which bottles would be served at the head table." Alessandro's expression became dangerously still. "Why wasn't I told?" Nora lowered her gaze. "I reported it to the estate manager. He said Vanessa approved the inspection." Matteo began searching the security records. "The estate manager disabled 2 cameras yesterday for maintenance." "Find him," Alessandro said. "Already trying. His phone is off." A heavy udar sounded against the safe room door. Rosa flinched. Vanessa screamed. Nora moved immediately, positioning herself between Rosa and the entrance. "He found us," she whispered. Alessandro's control slipped for the first time. "Nora, listen carefully. The door can withstand an explosion. Stay away from it." Another udar shook the steel frame. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Vanessa grabbed Nora's arm. "This is your fault. If you hadn't delayed me, I would be downstairs." Nora pulled free without raising her voice. "The downstairs room is beside the wine cellar. That may be exactly where he wanted us." Vanessa stopped breathing. Alessandro heard it. "What is in the cellar?" he asked. "Nothing," she replied too quickly. Matteo's tablet chimed. "I found a message sent from Vanessa's account 3 hours ago. It authorized a wine delivery through the private garage." Vanessa stared at the phone. "Someone used my account." "Perhaps," Alessandro said. "Then give Nora your phone." "Why?" "Because I no longer trust what leaves your hands." Vanessa clutched her purse to her chest. Nora saw fear in her expression, but it was not fear of the man outside. It was fear of discovery. "Give it to me," Nora said. "Stay out of this," Vanessa snapped. "You dragged her into it when you tried to throw her out of my home," Alessandro replied. His voice filled the small room like a locked door. "From this moment forward, Nora speaks with my authority." Vanessa's humiliation turned to fury. She threw the purse onto the bench. Nora opened it and found the phone beneath a silk scarf. The screen displayed 6 missed calls from an unnamed number. A new message appeared as she watched. "Did you get them into the cellar?" Nora's blood chilled. Vanessa lunged for the device, but Nora stepped back. "You were supposed to take Rosa downstairs," Nora said. Rosa looked at Vanessa with quiet devastation. "Was I the target?" "No," Vanessa whispered. "I swear." Alessandro leaned closer to the screen. "Then who was?" Before Vanessa could answer, the pounding outside stopped. The sudden silence felt worse. Nora heard metal scraping near the ventilation panel. A thin stream of pale smoke slipped through the grate. "Cover your mouths," she said. She grabbed towels from the medical cabinet, dampened them with bottled water, and handed one to Rosa. Alessandro ordered the Chicago response team to breach the east entrance, but Matteo shook his head. "They're 4 minutes out." "We may not have 4 minutes," Nora said. She examined the wall and noticed a narrow maintenance hatch beneath the bench. "There's another passage." Vanessa backed away. "Don't open it." Nora looked at her. "Why not?" Vanessa's composure finally collapsed. "Because Damon is not working for Victor Vale." She began sobbing, but Alessandro heard the truth beneath the tears. "He's working for someone inside the Moretti family." The smoke thickened. Nora pulled the hatch open, revealing a dark tunnel barely wide enough to crawl through. Then a phone began ringing somewhere inside it. Nora reached into the darkness and found a second mobile device taped beneath the opening. Its screen showed a live video feed from Alessandro's Manhattan office. Someone had been watching him the entire time. A distorted voice came through the speaker. "Send Nora Bennett into the tunnel alone, or Rosa Moretti dies before Alessandro's plane leaves the ground." "Nora, do not enter that tunnel," Alessandro said, but she was already pressing the damp towel into Rosa's hands and lowering herself beside the open hatch. The pale smoke thickened around them, curling beneath the emergency lights, while the second phone continued displaying a live feed of Alessandro's Manhattan office. Whoever had planned the attack knew where he was, who stood beside him, and exactly how long it would take him to reach Chicago. "He said Rosa dies if I don't go," Nora whispered. "He wants you frightened enough to obey." Alessandro's voice remained controlled, but his hand had closed so tightly around the edge of his desk that his knuckles had turned white. "You are not a bargaining piece." Nora looked at Rosa, who was struggling to breathe through the towel. "Neither is she." Vanessa backed against the wall. "You don't understand. Damon will do it. He isn't bluffing." Alessandro's gaze shifted toward her image. "Then tell me who gave the order." Vanessa shook her head, tears streaking her carefully made-up face. "He'll destroy my family. He already entered mine." A violent metallic snap came from the safe room door. The locking mechanism was beginning to bend. Nora placed the original phone inside her apron pocket and picked up the second device. "Alessandro, keep him talking." "Nora," his voice lowered, losing its command for one brief second. "Look at me." She turned the camera toward her face. Her brown eyes were frightened. Her hair had fallen loose around her cheeks and blood had soaked through the bandage on her palm. "You do not have to prove your worth by sacrificing yourself," he said. "I know," she answered. "I'm doing this because I can't leave Rosa behind." The words struck the oldest wound inside him. Everyone who had ever claimed loyalty to Alessandro had eventually asked what they would receive in return. Nora had been insulted, dismissed, and threatened, yet she was still protecting the woman beside her. "Then you follow my instructions," he said. "Not because I own your choice, but because I intend to bring you back alive." Nora nodded and entered the maintenance tunnel. The passage was narrow and cold, lined with pipes that vibrated beneath her hands. Behind her, Vanessa sealed the hatch to slow the smoke. Ahead, a dim green light blinked every few feet. The distorted voice returned through the second phone. "Keep crawling." "Who are you?" Nora asked. "Someone your father should have feared." She stopped. Alessandro heard the change in her breathing. "What does your father have to do with this?" Nora stared into the darkness. "My father died 12 years ago. Samuel Bennett did not die from a heart attack, the voice said. He died because he stole from the Moretti family. Nora's face tightened. My father never stole anything. He stole proof. Alessandro turned to Matteo. Find everything on Samuel Bennett. Matteo searched the encrypted archives while the jet crew waited downstairs. He worked as an accountant for Moretti Shipping 14 years ago. The file is sealed under your Uncle Enzo's authorization. Alessandro became still. Enzo Moretti had raised him after his father's murder, advised every major alliance, and personally recommended Vanessa as his future wife. Open it. I need your biometric approval. Alessandro placed his hand against the scanner. The file appeared, showing financial records, surveillance photographs, and one final report. Samuel Bennett had discovered millions of dollars being redirected from Moretti accounts to shell companies connected to Victor Vale. He had requested a private meeting with Alessandro's father 2 days before both men died. Your father was not a thief, Alessandro told Nora. He found a traitor. Nora closed her eyes, but she kept crawling. My mother always said he died trying to protect someone powerful enough to forget his name. Alessandro looked at her through the screen. I won't forget it again. The tunnel opened into the wine cellar behind a row of oak barrels. Nora climbed down quietly and saw Damon standing near the locked door with a handgun at his side. Beside him sat the estate manager, bound to a chair and unconscious. Damon was not the only intruder. A second man stood in the shadows wearing a Moretti family ring. Nora raised the phone just enough for Alessandro to see it. Matteo whispered, That ring belongs to Enzo's personal guard. The man stepped into the light. It was Julian Cross, Alessandro's godbrother, and the person responsible for protecting Rosa whenever Alessandro travelled. Where is the evidence? Julian asked. Nora remained behind the barrels. I don't know what you mean. Your father hid a ledger somewhere in this house. Your mother sent you here to find it. Nora's silence answered him. Alessandro's eyes narrowed. Is that why you took the job? She swallowed. My mother gave me an old key before she died. She said my father left the truth in the place where powerful men stored what they valued most. I came here hoping to clear his name, but I never found what the key opened. Julian smiled. You found it yesterday. Nora remembered the locked black case carried by the false wine inspector. More importantly, she remembered the small brass cabinet behind the oldest bottle rack, the one Vanessa had ordered her never to clean. The cabinet, she whispered. Damon turned toward it. At that exact moment, the Chicago security team breached the east entrance. Gunfire cracked upstairs. Julian grabbed Nora from behind and pressed the weapon against her side. Alessandro's composure shattered. Take your hands off her. Julian lifted the phone so Alessandro could see Nora trapped against him. Sign control of the lake routes over to Enzo before midnight, or the maid dies with her father's secret. Nora looked past Julian toward the brass cabinet. The old key around her neck suddenly felt heavy. Then she noticed the red light blinking beneath the wine rack and realized the cabinet was not hiding a ledger. It was hiding a recording device that had been capturing every word. She tore the key free, drove her elbow backward, and lunged toward the lock. A shot thundered through the cellar just as the cabinet door swung open, revealing a blood-stained ledger, a cassette marked with Alessandro's father's name, and a photograph that made Nora forget the pain burning across her shoulder. In the picture, Samuel Bennett stood beside Alessandro's father, while a much younger Vanessa watched from the doorway. The bullet tore across Nora's shoulder and shattered a bottle behind her, filling the cellar with the sharp smell of wine, but she did not release the cabinet door. Nora! Alessandro's voice thundered through the phone as Julian dragged her backward by the waist. Blood darkened the sleeve of her uniform, yet she twisted hard enough to throw the ledger beneath the wine rack, out of his reach. Damon rushed toward it, but the estate manager, still bound to the chair, kicked his ankle and sent him crashing into a barrel. Upstairs, Alessandro's security team pounded against the reinforced cellar entrance. 30 seconds until breach, Matteo reported as they raced toward the Manhattan elevator. Alessandro did not look away from Nora's image. Stay conscious. I am coming home. Nora pressed one hand against her shoulder. You cannot reach Chicago before midnight. Then I will end this from where I stand. He turned to the attorneys who had remained frozen inside his office. Prepare the transfer documents, Enzo demanded. Matteo stared at him. You cannot give him the lake routes. I am not giving him anything. Alessandro's expression became colder than the glass towers outside. I am making him believe he has won. In the cellar, Julian forced Nora to her knees and picked up the photograph from the cabinet. Vanessa stood in the safe room watching through Alessandro's phone, her face crumbling when she saw it. Tell them, Nora said. Tell them why you were there. Vanessa shook her head. Rosa reached for her hand, but Vanessa pulled away as though she did not deserve comfort. My father worked for Enzo, she whispered. He brought me to the estate when I was 12. I saw Samuel Bennett give that recording to Alessandro's father. Alessandro's jaw tightened. And you told Enzo. I was a child. My father said the Morettis would kill us if I stayed silent. Tears fell freely now. Enzo promised no one would be hurt. The next morning, both men were dead. Nora's eyes filled, but her voice remained steady. You knew my father was innocent all these years. I knew he tried to expose Enzo. I did not know where he hid the proof until you arrived wearing that key. The truth landed harder than any insult. Vanessa had not targeted Nora because of her uniform or her body. She had humiliated her to frighten her away before she could open the cabinet. You could have warned me, Nora said. Vanessa looked toward the smoke leaking around the safe room door. I was afraid. So was I. Nora lifted her chin despite the weapon at her side. Fear explains cruelty. It does not excuse it. Alessandro heard every word. Even wounded and surrounded by enemies, Nora refused to surrender her dignity or become cruel in return. Julian grabbed her hair and forced her face toward the second phone. Enough. Sign the routes over, Alessandro. A document appeared on Alessandro's screen. He placed his thumb against the digital seal. Release her first. You are in no position to negotiate. Neither are you. Alessandro nodded to Matteo, who opened a secure broadcast channel connecting every Moretti captain in Chicago, New York, and Detroit. Julian's face appeared on dozens of screens, along with the cellar, Nora's bloodied shoulder, and the cabinet containing the hidden evidence. You wanted control of my empire, Alessandro said. Now the entire empire is watching you betray it. Julian's confidence broke. Cut the feed. Damon raised his weapon toward the phone, but Nora swept the fallen brass key across the floor. It struck the emergency release beneath the wine rack. The reinforced cellar door unlocked with a heavy click. Alessandro's men stormed inside. Damon fired once into the ceiling before the estate manager knocked his arm aside. Security guards tackled him behind the barrels. Julian pulled Nora against his chest and pressed the gun beneath her chin. Everyone back! The room froze. Sign the transfer, he demanded. Alessandro placed his thumb on the seal, his eyes locked on Nora. I will sign when she is free. Nora saw the opening before anyone else. Julian was watching the screen, not the cracked bottle beneath his foot. She drove her heel down on his instep, dropped her weight, and rolled away as the guards surged forward. The weapon discharged into an empty barrel. Julian was pinned to the floor before he could fire again. Nora crawled toward the ledger instead of safety. She pushed it into the hands of the nearest guard. Protect this. It clears my father's name and proves who murdered Alessandro's. Alessandro closed his eyes for one brief second, overwhelmed by the realization that she had protected his family's truth while bleeding from a wound meant to silence her. Get her medical help, he ordered. Now. As the guards lifted Nora, Vanessa and Rosa emerged from the safe room. Vanessa crossed the cellar slowly, removed her diamond engagement ring and placed it on top of the cabinet. There is something else, she said. Enzo did not arrange this attack only to recover the ledger. Every screen went silent. Vanessa looked directly into Alessandro's eyes through the phone. The engagement contract you were supposed to sign Saturday gives him legal control if you die without a wife or heir. Matteo checked the document and went pale. She is right. The clause was hidden inside the family trust. Alessandro's voice turned dangerously quiet. Where is Enzo now? Before Vanessa could answer, the estate lights returned, and every television in the house switched on at once. Enzo Moretti appeared on the screens from Alessandro's private Chicago study, holding Rosa's heart medication in one hand and a detonator in the other. Midnight is no longer the deadline, he said with a smile. Alessandro has 10 minutes to choose. His empire, or the woman who just became the only witness capable of destroying it. 10 minutes, Enzo repeated from the study, pressing his thumb against the detonator. Choose carefully. Alessandro watched the screen from Manhattan, but the man Enzo expected to see was gone. The cold mafia boss who had protected only power had been replaced by something far more dangerous, a man with someone worth losing everything for. Matteo, open every Moretti channel, Alessandro ordered. Uncles, captains, attorneys, federal contacts, everyone. Matteo connected the feed as Alessandro faced Enzo. You want the Empire? Take it. The room around him fell silent. Enzo's smile faded. What did you say? The lake routes, the warehouses, the accounts. I surrender every asset you believe gives you power. Nora stood in the wine cellar while a medic wrapped her shoulder. Her face had gone pale, but she pushed herself upright when she heard him. Alessandro, don't. He looked directly at her through the phone. An empire can be rebuilt. A life cannot. No one had ever chosen Nora so openly. Not when classmates mocked her body, not when her former boyfriend hid their relationship, and not when employers treated her as invisible. Now the most feared man in Chicago was prepared to lose everything before allowing someone to reduce her to a bargaining piece. Enzo's expression twisted. Touching, but useless. She still has the ledger. Nora held it against her chest. And the recording? She said. Your confession is already being transmitted. Enzo glanced toward the security monitor in the study. Matteo had turned the hidden cellar recorder into a live broadcast. Every Moretti leader had heard Vanessa's testimony, seen Julian's betrayal, and watched Enzo threaten Rosa. You have no authority left, Alessandro said. Not because I took it from you, because they saw what you truly are. Voices began entering the secure channel. One captain withdrew his loyalty, then another. Within seconds, Enzo's carefully built support collapsed. Furious, he lifted the detonator. Then none of you deserve this house. Nora studied the wine cellar walls and remembered the blinking device beneath the cabinet. The detonator is connected to the old gas line, she said. My father marked it in the ledger. She opened the final page and found a hand-drawn diagram. The shut-off valve is behind the north furnace panel. Rosa pointed toward the service passage. That passage leads there. Despite her wounded shoulder, Nora moved toward it. The medic tried to stop her, but she shook her head. I know the old maintenance layout. The guards don't. Alessandro's voice softened. You have already done enough. Nora met his gaze. So have you. Let me choose too. He understood then that protecting her did not mean controlling her. 2 guards go with her, he ordered, and they follow her instructions. Nora led them through the narrow passage as the countdown reached 6 minutes. Enzo abandoned the study and headed toward the garage, but Vanessa appeared at the end of the corridor. Her engagement ring was gone, and so was her arrogance. You used me because I was afraid, she said. Not anymore. She triggered the fire doors, trapping him between 2 steel barriers until Alessandro's security team arrived. In the furnace room, Nora found the valve behind a rusted panel. It would not turn. One guard reached for it, but the wheel was jammed. Nora wrapped both hands around the metal, ignoring the pain in her palm and shoulder. Help me, she said. Together, they forced it clockwise. The gas warning light changed from red to green with 43 seconds remaining. Enzo pressed the detonator. Nothing happened. Seconds later, he was disarmed and taken into custody, along with Julian and Damon. By sunrise, the ledger and recording had cleared Samuel Bennett's name and exposed the conspiracy behind the deaths of both fathers. Vanessa gave a full statement and accepted responsibility for helping Enzo, but before she was escorted away, she faced Nora. I attacked the part of you I thought the world would believe was weak. Nora held her gaze. My body was never my weakness. Your fear was yours. 3 hours later, Alessandro's jet landed in Chicago. He crossed the estate without acknowledging the captains waiting for orders. He found Nora in the library, sitting beside Rosa beneath the warm morning light. Her uniform was torn, her shoulder bandaged, and her eyes exhausted. When she tried to stand, he lowered himself in front of her instead. The feared Mafia Boss knelt before the maid everyone else had overlooked. You risked your empire, she whispered. No, he said. I discovered what it was worth. He removed his coat and placed it gently around her shoulders. You never needed to become smaller to deserve respect, Nora. Everyone around you needed to become better. Tears filled her eyes, but this time she did not hide them. He wiped one away with his thumb and offered his hand rather than taking hers. Nora chose to hold it. Months later, Samuel Bennett's name was placed beside Alessandro's father's at Moretti Shipping, honouring the two men who died protecting the truth. Nora became director of the family's charitable foundation, not because Alessandro rescued her, but because her courage, intelligence and compassion had already proven who she was. Alessandro rebuilt his organization without Enzo's corruption, and beside Nora, he slowly learned that trust was not a weakness. At their wedding the following spring, he held her hand before the same society that once judged her and called her the bravest woman he had ever known. She had never been difficult to love. She had only been surrounded by people too shallow to recognize her value. Alessandro had spent his life ruling through fear, but Nora taught him that the strongest power was choosing love without shame. Would you have entered that tunnel to protect someone who once stood by while you were humiliated? Share your answer, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional Mafia Boss stories where courage is seen, dignity is restored, and love chooses the person the world underestimated.